like to thank the organizers of this conference here today for the invitation to come and speak to you. I come with great pleasure. It's always a pleasure to come here to Bari and, of course, meet you again. I've seen you before, and I'm seeing you now again. I've been asked to consider the role of Clil teachers and to take into consideration the Clil competencies grid that has been devised by a group of us around about 2009, a European group. The Clil competencies grid in question is quite a complicated one. So what I've done is to extract from the information on that grid a series of references as to what I feel is not only just the role of the Clil teacher, but the roles in the plural of the Clil teacher. And first of all, I'd like to clear the ground of a few possible ambiguities or perhaps things not fully understood, because we need to understand exactly what we're talking about in order to understand what the implications are of these things on our actual practice. So a very sort of mundane question could be, what is Clil? But I don't think actually it is really quite banal, because I do get the impression that the Clil, or the term Clil, is being used as a buzzword or a parola passepartout to refer to any kind of foreign language medium instruction situations. In fact, I don't think that is the case. I think you can separate the two out. A foreign language medium instruction program is one thing. To call it a Clil program is another thing. And I think this becomes clear as soon as you see and you begin to look more clearly or more attentively at what Clil actually is. It's an acronym that refers, that means content and language integrated learning. So we are making a statement. It's a statement. And so if you are stating that, then you are saying that your program is doing that, and it will lead to that. Now, I think you cannot actually say that all foreign language medium instruction programs actually promise to do that. When you talk about teaching a non-language subject through a foreign language, you are highlighting the fact that another language is being used to mediate the content. Today it's Italian, tomorrow it's English or French or whatever. You're highlighting the aspect of the medium which changes. You're not highlighting or making evident all the issues that come about as a result of that, and that you can't hide under the carpet, because they have to be brought out into the open. Because as it's already been said, you will have heard it many, many times, I'm sure. When the ministry decided to introduce the teaching of non-language subjects through a foreign language, they were obviously concerned with language. So this is part of an innovation in the language policy of the state. Okay, it's the politica linguistica dello Stato. They've decided that this could lead to higher competencies in the foreign language. So therefore, there is a need to, let's say, to take care of the foreign language. But then at a more local level, when you actually do teach the non-language subject through a foreign language, you obviously have to take care of the subject which is being taught through the foreign language, because obviously that cannot suffer either. So Clil is a label that can be stuck onto programs that actually make an effort and are aware of the issues that come about as a result of teaching a non-language subject through a foreign language. Because obviously it cannot be reduced to a mere change of medium. So if Clil is this, and of course this is obvious, when the ministry, as l'ispettrice Langer has just showed us, When the ministry decided to finance corsi metodologici for Clil teachers, they call them Clil courses. They are Clil courses. In other words, these courses are designed to help you to meet the challenges that are brought into place because you are teaching through a foreign language medium, okay? So it has appeared, this has been indicated already before, because there's a need and it's at a European level, but we've understood that just by plopping the students into another language, it doesn't necessarily follow that they're going to learn that foreign language. The dangers are that they won't, and the dangers are that they won't even learn the content, okay? So, you know, research has shown us that. So it's not a mere intuition, it's research shows us that it will not happen automatically. So this is why Clil as a label has appeared. It's not actually new, in a sense. A similar label appeared in Great Britain in the 1970s, and that was another acronym called LAC. I think I've mentioned this to you before. And this acronym it means language across the curriculum. Now, why did this acronym come about? It came about because there was a realization as a result of a national report, the Bullock report, that there was an extremely high percentage of analfabetismo di ritorno in British citizens. Citizens who'd been at school and then had no longer read or write when they left school. And obviously they didn't have a good master of the mother tongue or the national language before they left school. So this acronym means that the responsibility for promoting language cannot be solely on the shoulders of the insegnanti di lettere. It has to be spread out across the curriculum and everybody's responsible for it. This referred to the national language. Clil was born with reference to the foreign language medium, not English language medium, national language medium, but foreign language medium. But in a sense, it's highlighting a responsibility for a non-language subject teacher for language. So a non-language subject teacher teaching through a foreign language is also responsible for promoting that foreign language without actually teaching it, okay? So this is the essence of Clil. Who is the Clil teacher? I think the ministry has made that very clear in the DM of 2010 and the reform of teacher education, when in Articolo 14, the ministry, or the legislatore, refers to secondary school teachers of non-language subjects, So I think that has cleared the ground of a certain sort of idea that perhaps it could have been taken on by language teachers. But of course, when you're talking about a non-language subject, then of course a language teacher is not qualified either academically or in terms of the abilitazione for teaching a non-language subject. So what sort of roles have I sort of found or come, well, also through my experience with working in the Clil field, what roles have I found? Well, most of the roles that I have found are already roles that you already fulfill, okay? The only thing is that the roles that you already fulfill have to be sort of looked at again because a new slant is put on them, okay? There's only perhaps 2 or 3 roles, new roles that I found. So we have Clil teacher as a planner. You do plan, but what changes now? What changes as a result of you having to take on board language issues? The Clil teacher as a language user. When you use Italian as your medium language, do you ever really contemplate that as being as an issue? No, you don't. It immediately salta all'occhio that it does become an issue when you are having to use a foreign language. Clil teacher as a language promoter. When you teach through Italian, do you ever think, well, I've got to promote Italian? Probably you don't. Well, not perhaps to the extent that you should. But obviously you do have to when you are calling your foreign language medium program a Clil program. You have to take that on board. A Clil teacher as a materials designer. Your project here is an excellent example of materials designers. We don't have case editrici or even sort of national centers which are interested in producing materials for teachers. So most Clil teachers have to go online and use technology. The Clil teacher as an evaluator. You already carry out these roles. You evaluate, you assess. But what changes? Something changes in this role that you already know. Clil teacher as a team partner. Probably this is a new role that has to be gradually worked out. I'm sorry, I've jumped one. Clil teacher as a discipline promoter. That's a new role. Probably as a discipline protector. I'll try and explore that, what I mean by that. And Clil teacher, as a result of all this, as methodological innovator. What I'm saying is, I don't really like the natural association that is being given to Clil as Clil is innovation. One should ask yourself, but why? Why should there be this sort of natural genetic connection between Clil and innovation? So there are reasons connected with language, of course, and connected with promoting learning in both the subjects that you have to teach, okay? Well, you don't teach two, you teach one and you promote the other. Okay, let's very quickly. So, the Clil teacher as a planner. Awareness of things new and competence of things new that you are adding to already existing awarenesses and competencies. There will be an impact of Clil on your idea of aims and objectives, okay? For several reasons. Well, one of the reasons will be that you're going to have to take on board or have to contemplate stating language objectives. In other words, in my module or my teaching as in Clil mode, by which I say I'm going to promote language, what am I going to promote of that language? Is it going to be specific language skills? Am I going to promote reading and writing, listening and speaking? I could put that as an objective. Am I going to promote certain aspects of microlingua? Well, I put that down. In some programmazione I've seen online, I do see that discipline teachers do specify lexical objectives. Okay, that's true. But you might want to specify, you're not obliged to, but you might want to specify competencies in certain text types or genres. Writing a scientific report could be, you know, a language objective reached through them, your students, learning your science objectives. So that regards the language, but there's another effect on the way you decline your discipline, your content objectives, and that's connected with language. How to say this? The idea behind doing Clil is that the competence in the foreign language is going to be better. How is it going to be better? Well, it's going to be better as a result of learning academic content, cognitively challenging content through the language. You know, the wash-off effect is going to be on the language. So that means to say that there has to be some kind of care in declining the objectives in terms of not only knowledge, the facts they need to know, or knowledge about this, knowledge about that, but also the skills that they need to be able to activate on that knowledge. In other words, to, let's say, to analyze, to apply, to judge, to synthesize, all these things that they learn to do on the content, on the facts, on the knowledge about the procedures. But all that doing will pass through language. And so that will impact on the language that they learn, because they're learning the content through the language, and that will impact on the language that they're using to learn that content. So we will get what has been called a cognitive, academic language proficiency. But we need those kinds of objectives in place. They need to be declined like that in order for us to be able to ensure that kind of objective. So in the methodological courses, you need to work on of course, if you do that already, there's no need to look at that as an issue. That's why I'm saying it's all a question of circumstance. If you already do decline your objectives in that way, then that's perfect. If you don't, then there's a need to review the way you decline your objectives, because that redeclining them in this manner will help us to reach your learning objectives, if you're thinking in terms of obiettivi per competenza, but also the language, the quality of the language. You're going to have to look at the time issues, because all teachers that have been involved in CLIL experiences say that learning in CLIL takes longer. That may be true, but then I say, let's stop a minute. Maybe we're trying to ensure learning rather than just keep tabs on what we're teaching. In other words, we're turning the perspective around. We're looking at ensuring learning rather than being worried about what we're teaching, okay? Because learning takes time. It does take time. And of course, if by learning you are including all those other cognitive aspects, like, applying your knowledge, being creative with the knowledge, in other words, doing a whole learning cycle, rather than just giving facts to be learnt by heart, then of course, that takes shorter time. Learning takes longer. The choice of content, what content to choose within your whole content of that year, what content is most suitable, or what new content could you contemplate on introducing. So a new spotlight is opened on content. New windows are opened. You might even take the challenge and say, well, I've always wanted to do this. I've never thought about it. I'd like to deal with this subject because doing this content through French is ideal for my subject. Okay. A teacher, the CLIL teacher as a language user. You need awareness of new things and competencies at new levels. You need to be able to monologue in the foreign language, okay? Because in the transmission part of the lesson, okay, you need to be able to sustain your use of the foreign language for a length of time, which is different from the short interactive turns, okay? So you need to be trained on these two different types of speaking. You will need to be able to manage your use of the language when you use it, the way you manage your velocità di eloquio, the way you will use giving examples, the way you will reformulate, the fact that you will repeat. All these are mechanisms, linguistic mechanisms, to help to get your message across. Here I'm talking about you as a teacher talking, not materials talking. You will need to be able to give explanations, to describe, to narrate. Think of history, narrating episodes. You will need to be able to use the foreign language for classroom management. All this requires levels of competency, but it requires a level of flexibility. It's always struck in my mind, I may have said this to you before, but a colleague of yours in economics was extremely conscientious, planned his lessons brilliantly, but he said, I cannot respond to a student's question. I can go down the pista principale, like skiing, but I can't go off fuori pista. In other words, he didn't have the ability, the flexibility in his competence to respond to the unexpected. So that's an edge on your competence. It's just not, it's an added level of competency, I would say, this flexibility. CLIL teacher as language, foreign language promoter, a new awarenesses about language learning, foreign language learning. and a competence in adopting strategies for promoting language. You don't normally adopt strategies to promote language in your subjects. You use strategies to promote the learning of your subject. So these are new things that are going to have to be added on to your already existing competencies as a language promoter, which has probably been under the ground for a long time, but will probably, as a result of your training in this area, have an impact and a positive washback effect on the way you will look at issues in Italian and the learning of your subject vis-a-vis Italian, okay? Because you will probably begin to realize that there's a need for you to take care of Italian through your subject. Because of course it is true that if a student doesn't have a command of the language of biology, how can that student say or let the teacher know that he understands and has learnt that part of biology that you want him to learn? He can't do it because he doesn't possess the language for it, okay? So part of him being able to manifest his knowledge of biology is for him to have the language to be able to do it, okay? So objectives need to be relooked at, strategies need to be acquired, and materials need to be looked at for their suitability language-wise for language learning, for access into the materials, because they could be too difficult. Here we have the problem of comprehension. Are the materials too difficult? Okay? We can't have difficulties of comprehension, because if there are difficulties of comprehension, then students are not going to access the content either. Okay? And of course, production. If in our objectives we have decided to promote writing, then of course we are going to have to put in place activities for writing in our teaching. We have found, looking at textbooks and looking at the tesine di unità didattiche devised by many of our teachers enrolled on the corso di perfezionamento, not on this current course financed by the ministry, that they don't promote, they don't envisage promoting writing, and therefore what writing is done is actually very, very limited. It would be like, say, completing an exercise with one word. It could be completing a definition with a part of a sentence, or it could be writing a definition, or putting in words on planisferi. Very little writing of texts, in fact. So you could say that writing ability is not really promoted much in Italian through the non-language subjects. In some cases we've seen anyway. So if you do devise objectives in those terms, then the materials and the activities that you promote for language promotion have to take that into consideration. The Clew teacher as a protector of the discipline. Now then, here two disciplines meet up, okay? They are together. Now, I'm aware that each discipline, you all represent disciplines, different disciplines here, have their own specific epistemology that characterizes that discipline, and that must be kept in place. It cannot be lost. So, any kind of activities that are introduced must respect that kind of epistemology. But by that, I'm not saying that the current tradition of teaching that some of you might adopt, which could be considered to be a transmission type mode, is actually suitable for learning. So protection of the epistemology of the discipline has to take into account, however, the need for the pupils to learn correctly, efficiently, through new ways of learning that involve them, and that leads to language use. As Gisella said, you use language to learn, you speak to learn the content, you write to learn the content, but you also speak to learn the language, and you also write to learn the language. So writing and speaking have a double function for the Clil situation. They can help learning, and they can help learning the content, and they can help learning the language. So protect the discipline from any kind of language teaching methodology invasion, but keep in mind that language teaching methodology has a very excellent tradition of learning strategies that could easily be introduced into the non-language discipline classroom for facilitating group work, etc., that requires the use of language. So that would be the methodology aspect. Clil as materials designer, well, yes, all teachers at the moment are materials designers. They are becoming, they're acquiring a new profession, let's say. Normally this profession is associated with case editrici, but at the moment we're seeing teachers who are actually devising their own materials. And from what I've seen, what they devise is excellent stuff. And more so when they work with a teacher colleague, a language teacher colleague. The stuff is really explosive. And, okay, I'll say it here, but I've seen some stuff that has been produced by case editrici who are normally associated with the language teaching field, but they pass this stuff off as Clil. But as soon as you begin opening what is written and what is passed off as Clil, salta all'occhio that it's not. You know, this is, you know, science in Clil, or this is maths in Clil, but it's not. It's language. It's language. What is totally lacking in these things is the cognitive dimension of learning. It's just language learning. Okay? So that cannot be. It cannot be. And of course, we can't get the language that we want if that's the kind of materials that they... So when you have a Clil teacher or a discipline teacher and a language teacher working together and producing a material, you really do get excellent, excellent quality stuff. They need to be able to identify materials online. They need to be able to adapt them, integrate them. In other words, what is called in Italian la didattizzazione del materiale. This is a new competence, I would say, that has to be added. A Clil teacher as evaluator. Well, you assess, you already do it. But what's new? The problem is, you've taught through a foreign language. So what do? I've taught through a foreign language. How do I evaluate my content through the foreign language? And what do I evaluate? The content, but do I evaluate the language as well? Is it my job to evaluate the language? Well, these are issues that are open, that have to be looked into. And of course, here, what is called chiamato in causa, is the language teacher. Your language colleague is teaching English just down the corridor. Does she know what you're doing? Is she aware? Is she interested? I'm saying she because mostly they're foreign, but of course, give a bit of justice to the females. Is she aware? Does she want to be involved? In other words, she's just down the corridor and she's teaching your pupils, okay? Try and draw her in. And of course, here we have her, Clil teacher as a team partner. You know, it cannot be possible that a Clil teacher doing history of art has la sezione quarta, okay? And they do history of art in English once a week, okay? For the whole year, once a week. Now that's a lot of time doing history of art in English con gli studenti della quarta A. The insegnante di inglese della quarta A is not involved, doesn't want to be involved, okay? But her students are learning a lot through history of art. They're not only learning history of art in English, and therefore language concerning history of art in English, but they're learning lots of cognitive strategies in English. Why doesn't she capitalize on that? She could change her curriculum, fix up or upskill her objectives. You know, she doesn't have to begin from A, she can begin from D, because they're bringing something to her lessons which they normally wouldn't bring. So really, teaching the team has to be created because both the members of the team have a lot to gain, one from the other. And therefore, as a result, we have the Clew Teacher as innovator. All this means that Clil is innovation. But it's a gradual thing, and it depends on what your situazione di partenza is. If you have a kind of teaching which is already in place, which is suitable for these problems, then you don't have much to change. If your style of teaching is a long way, is distant from being able to grapple with these problems, then you're going to have to do some changing to try and ensure that what you have in place is going to meet the promise. Ensure that your learning of content is going to take place, but also promote language. Not teach it. You're not language teachers. Your language teacher down the road, down the corridor, is the language teacher. Okay, I finished. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.